In the first age, in the first battle, when the shadows first lengthened, one stood. He chose the path of perpetual torment. In his ravenous hatred, he found no peace, and with boiling blood, he scoured the umbral plains, seeking vengeance against the Dark Lords who had wronged him. And those that tasted the bite of his sword named him the Doom Slayer.
Anger, rage, wrath. Emotions that are often seen in a negative light, due to its destructive power, the consequences it has on not just others but the user, and the tendency to be, well, uncontrollable. Many characters have tapped into such rage, such as Naruto, Goku, Gohan, Ryu, Naofumi. Others are even the embodiment of anger itself, like the Hulk, the Red Lanterns, and the Great Doomslayer. Currently, I am working on what if Doomslayer was in Berserk, and that video will be dropping in the upcoming week. But since I don't really have much else to say except him hack-slashing demons and literally being too angry to die, I don't really have much else to analyze when it comes to the Doomslayer himself. I'll just play a clip of his rampage real quick. Dang it, bro, it had a family. But there are plenty examples of an angry character. But today we're going to be talking about my 4 favorite examples of men who are literally too angry to die. The beauty of the angry protagonist. Now, before I give the first example, these 4 are my favorite just because of some of the common themes they all share. When it comes to these 4, there seems to be some recurring themes that you'll kind of notice throughout when I tell their stories a little bit. So I'm going to start off telling their stories, and then I'm going to kind of analyze the character a little bit. And also kind of give the reasons as to why I think their way of going about their revenge or anger is just the most badass way I've ever seen. So let's start with a character who comes from my favorite video game franchise of all time. Let's begin with
Scorpion.
Scorpion is basically the poster boy of Mortal Kombat, but he was also known as Hanzo Hasashi and was an assassin of the Shi'ai Ryu, a rival clan to the Lin Kuei. Hanzo had a wife and a beautiful child he loved very much, until one day his clan was ambushed and all were killed, including him. Scorpion is then resurrected by Quan Chi, the man who is actually responsible for not only his death but of his entire clan. But Quan Chi blames Sub-Zero, a member of the Lin Kuei, and with a little bit of magic he distorts some of Scorpion's memories, and bada bing bada boom, you now have a specter of literal rage. Now Hanzo Hasashi was no more, and he has been revived as the specter of vengeance, Scorpion. The desire to avenge his fallen is so great, he ends up killing Sub-Zero, despite Raiden giving Scorpion a deal in Mortal Kombat 9, that if he were to spare Sub-Zero's life, he would talk to the Elder Gods to revive his clan. But Scorpion was too consumed by his anger and hatred, and well, this is what happens. But then it turns out Sub-Zero has a younger brother who wants payback for his older brother. But then later on, they find out it was all Quan Chi's fault. And in a rage no longer going by Scorpion, but once again by Hanzo Hasashi, kills Quan Chi and forms an alliance with younger brother Sub-Zero, also known as Kuai Liang. Scorpion really does go perfectly with the concept of vengeance, as he seems to embody it perfectly, from his voice, to his abilities to use hellfire, and literally send you to hell, to of course his classic phrase, all seem to connect beautifully with his story. A man who wanted revenge, and then he accomplished it, just to find out the truth that the one responsible is the same man who gave him his new life. Betrayal and justice. This will be one of the recurring themes you see with the rest of the characters we talk about. With a game full of gods, martial artists, cyborgs, and of course ninjas, Scorpion has always earned a special place in our heart. Well, unless you're like a diehard Sub-Zero fan. Now, something I think is a really interesting touch that they seem to do with a lot of the angry characters, and that's something I just want to point out real quick, because I was going to point it out later. But it seems as when a character is like really off his rocker and is completely past the point of no return, his eyes go all white. But Scorpion's character is a beautiful embodiment of what rage can turn into. That even though it can push you so far to accomplish your goal, at many times it can be uncontrollable and can cost you what you want. Now let's move on to another character who comes from another one of my favorite video game franchises,
Kratos.
Now, when Kratos was the DLC in Mortal Kombat 9, which is again the best Mortal Kombat of all time, fight me, I was so hyped. Kratos, born a Spartan, was trained from young to be a warrior. Later on, we find out that he is a son of Zeus and that he has a brother named Deimos, but we're gonna focus on Kratos. He becomes a general who ends up becoming power hungry and wins tons of battles until one day he gets bested and then he makes a deal with Ares, being that he would now become a servant of Ares if Ares would spare his life and defeat his enemies. So Ares grants him his wish, and for the upcoming years, Kratos would serve Ares, killing whoever was against his will. Until one day, one of those people just so happened to be his wife and daughter. I think you can already see the parallel between him and Scorpion. Had a loved one, lost a loved one, betrayal. Quote, "When a man learns to love, he must also bear the risk of hatred." I think these quotes perfectly put into example what kind of happened with Scorpion and Kratos here. Before I continue on with Kratos' story, we can really see how they had loved ones, being that their own wife and child died. With Scorpion, he found out he was betrayed later on, versus Kratos, who felt betrayed from that point forward. And so Kratos would then embark on a literal killing spree and kill every single god of Olympus. This guy was literally sent to the underworld and did not die, literally because he was too angry to. Like, huh? And in the most recent God of War, even though we see Kratos tap into his rage in the gameplay and all of that, we definitely see a much more mature Kratos. Versus before, when he was younger, he literally did not listen to anybody. If you were in his way, you were dead. Unless you were Aphrodite for obvious reasons. But Kratos' brutal killings of all the gods just shows the kind of rage he did. And I think that was the most badass thing about Kratos. It wasn't just the fact that he went on rampage to kill the gods and literally everyone who stood before him. It was the way he went about. I mean, they put him in Mortal Kombat for a reason. But Kratos always having the guilt of killing his wife and daughter as their ashes cling to his body, making his skin white. He lives with that constant torment that he was responsible for his wife and daughter's death. But of course, he couldn't just blame himself. He had to blame the person who sent him there in the first place, Ares. So just like Scorpion, Kratos ends up defeating the person who gave him their second chance at life. And then he proceeded to kill everybody who tried to betray him from then on. But now I think we can move on to another character from another video game, but sadly this video game has kind of been forgotten. I did a video on it that I think it's a forgotten treasure, and definitely please put him in Marvel vs. Capcom. I beg you. Or give him his own anime. Look, just bring him back. We're gonna be talking about
Asura the traitor! Asura the destructor!
Now, for Scorpion, I would use the word vengeance. For Kratos, I would use the word rage. Now, for Asura, I would have to use the word wrath. Like, oh boy, what can I say? Nah, look, everything Kratos did was nuts, and everything Scorpion did, badass, yes. But this man, Asura, bro, it's, okay, just watch this clip. I do not even care if I get copyrighted. Just watch.
You traitorous! It wasn't me! I have decided to save Israel. What great rebirth!
Father!
Mithra,
Your death shall be the foundation of my new world.
You bastards!
Asura? Do you even know what you want? You have already failed once at living. You are a fool. Next time, do not come back.
So Asura was from this group known as the Eight Generals, and their job was to kind of purify the world of the Vlithra, which were kind of like the bad guys of the story. But then after they win a major battle, he is then framed for killing, I think, the Grand Priest. So then they kill his wife and kidnap his daughter. Like, why? Like, come on. Every time you gotta mess with the man. You don't mess with a man's family. He's literally so angry, and he doesn't want to see his daughter cry or suffer anymore. This man literally loses his memories and still goes on these rampages. And then there's a scene later on where there's kind of like this girl who looks a lot like his daughter, and when she's killed, oh boy, like just when you think this man can't get any more angry, any more full of wrath and hatred, he just cranks it up another notch. It's honestly insane. They need an Asura's Wrath 2, or they just need a remastered version for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5. I don't care. This man needs to come back. In terms of the actual video game itself, it's a little but in terms of story, Asura's Wrath is amazing. Asura literally beats everybody. Even the god in the world of Asura's Wrath presents himself to Asura, and it's like, here, take my place. And Asura punches him in the face and says, no. How pissed do you have to be that God's like, hey, yo, you could take my place and you can run things however you want, and he punched him in the face? That takes some big balls. But I think I've kind of gone on long enough about how cool Asura is. Just looking at him, you could tell this dude is angry. Even when he's not angry, he looks angry. Like, don't even buy the game. Just go on YouTube, look up the Asura complete story, and just watch the cutscenes. You will have a good time, I promise you. Now, the final character we're going to be talking about is, of course, my favorite manga/anime character of all time, the main protagonist of Kentaro Miura's Berserk, Guts. Now, unlike the other ones, Guts didn't really have a family of his own before he got backstabbed. He had a girl, he had, you know, the love of his life already, and she ends up being raped in front of his very eyes by his best friend. So, you know, that might be something that might rub somebody the wrong way. I mean, I don't know. As well as it kind of happened in the pool of his friend's blood. So, like, oh, you know, I can see why he's a little upset. As well as his childhood absolutely sucked. And just kind of like the rest of these characters, unlike Scorpion, because Scorpion isn't really a main character, he's a massive underdog. There's literally at least 50 examples where you could point at Guts and be like, he should have died right then and there. Why didn't he? Because he was too angry to. This man swings a 400-pound sword that's as big as him. And when he was incapable of using his arm, you know what he did? He picked it up with his mouth and swung it. This man got a horn shoved through the side of his cheek and out the other, and he turned around, bit it, and then proceeded to kill her. Like, just look at it. How the what the huh does he... Oh my goodness. Now, something I do find very interesting about Guts' character is that when he is calm, he tends to be a very rational person, thinks things through. We do see his maturity and growth as a character over time in Berserk, which is something I really do appreciate. He's not just some angry numbskull who runs around screaming he wants to be the Wizard King. Oh wait, how did that get in there? But when Guts is angry, oh boy. Okay, so I brought it up earlier that when they get mad, their eyes turn all white, but there are literally moments where it's stated, yo, Guts no longer looks human. And I haven't even got into when Guts uses the Berserker armor. Okay, Berserk Guts. Okay, the Berserker armor is just perfect. It takes away all feeling of fear and pain. Give that to somebody like Guts who has the anger he has, and you got a deadly recipe there. It's very evident throughout Berserk, Guts' anger and rage and desire for vengeance is what really pushes him constantly through and through. But when Guts goes Berserk, he no longer has any hinges, no brakes, no restrictions. To the point he runs the risk of killing his own comrade. Now, for those of you that haven't read Berserk, I did a video, it's like 42 minutes long, where I kind of go through the story of Guts, so you can watch that to kind of get a better tone of everything that's happened to Guts so far in the story. But this man just keeps going. I think out of all the characters, Guts really does exemplify human rage. Despite all his suffering, no matter what pain he goes through, he keeps pushing on forward. And even though later on his motives kind of change a little bit, well, a lot, that he wants to now protect Casca, who was the love of his life that kind of got violated in front of him, his overall method stays the same. Fight, about to lose, gets angry, wins. Oh, and barely survive every time. Hey, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But all four of these characters are absolute stud, who had ones that were close to them betrayed, and in a cry of justice take matters into their own hands. Characters who don't stand by and wait for the help of others, but if not, take their own inner desires and angers, and unleashes them on anybody foolish enough to stand in their way. Scorpion, the specter of vengeance, Kratos with his Spartan rage, Asura with his wrath, and Guts when he goes berserk. These are four characters whose stories somewhat mirror each other in certain ways, but each have their own spin on what anger is and how they unleash said anger. But when you do push them past the point of no return, and they do unleash their wrath, It is a beautiful sight to behold. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on the bell notifications. That way you are notified when a new video pops up on some of your favorite anime and manga content. This has been The Masked Man. Hope everyone has a blessed rest of the day, and peace.